Hello and welcome to Let's Pod This. My name is Andy Moore. Thank you for being here. This is our first post-election podcast, and what a week, what a couple of weeks it has been. I've honestly lost track of time to some degree. I guess we're a week and a half post-election. Our president has been elected. The current president is not accepting that.
As of today, Friday, as we're recording this, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina's results were, predicted. And so today is the official day that media outlets have called the Electoral College 306 to 232.
Wow. Which is, of course, the same margin by which President Trump won.
I think the other big news is that the election is over, and as everyone predicted, now that the election is over, COVID is gone. COVID's gone. It's not a big deal anymore. It was all a political. The virus was a political stunt, and now that the election is over, we can quit talking about that pesky fake virus and all go back to our normal lives.
It is a fake virus.
All right. Well, before we are clearly chomping at the bit and excited that we've missed 2 weeks. So those voices you heard, of course, are Bailey Perkins and Scott Melson. Hello to both of you.
Hello, and for the love, the virus isn't fake. It's worse than ever. Just as a disclaimer, since I am technically a doctor, I don't want to be accused of peddling false information. So everyone, please stay home. Don't leave your house if you don't have to, and wear a mask if you do. It's truly worse now than it's ever been.
But surely our listeners know by now that humor. And
one hopes, one hopes. So
that's all we can do is hope these days. Thoughts and prayers and masks. Also joining us this week is State Representative Cyndi Munson. Hello, Madam Representative.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for being here. Representative Munson just won her re-election a week and a half ago. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah. Campaigning in a global pandemic was interesting, to say the least. So I am glad that part of my life is over, at least for the next couple months.
Right. Well, and, I think listeners who may be familiar with your political history in your race, you have had a number of unusual circumstances from your very first election where you were running for a seat where the incumbent, the previous person, died while in office. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I challenged the late Representative David Dank in 2014, and then he passed away in 2015. So I turned around and ran, and then I had to run for re-election in 2016, 18, and 20. So I have basically been running for office and campaigning and knocking doors for like 7 years.
If the constituents in your district don't know you by now, I don't know what else you could do. Surely you've knocked on nearly every door there.
Yeah, and if I've...
I was going to say, I want to emphasize the history that Cyndi did as well. There's a lot of political folks in Oklahoma that credit Cyndi for leading the blue wave that took place even in 2018, because her election then spurred more seats to turn blue within Oklahoma County. And so Cyndi's hard work and significance has been connected to seeing Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County become a little bit more purple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is tough work, but we continue to do it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service to our state and to the constituents of your district. So I think today we're just going to get right into it because I know that you are short on time. And the topic of the day is, one of the overarching narratives that we have experienced here in Oklahoma City and a good chunk of the state of Oklahoma. I guess it's 3 weeks ago then, almost 2 weeks ago. So the week before election, we had a historic ice storm that, ravaged our state. I didn't have power at my house for almost 2 weeks. I didn't have internet for a full 2 weeks, just got that back the other day. And that story is not uncommon, right? I think all of us lost power for some amount of time there. And my neighbor, as we speak, listeners might be able to listen closely and hear their generator going. My neighbors behind me still don't have power. The guys have been out there working on it all day today. Again, this is the second or third time that they've had electrical workers out there working on it. And that means I can't imagine how disruptive their life has been. And that has been the case for a number of folks in Oklahoma City, particularly
and businesses.
Yeah, and businesses. And Representative Munson, that led to you and some of your colleagues issuing a press release the other day. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and maybe we'll start the conversation right there?
Yeah, I'll start with like you mentioned, Andy, my own lived experience. I went 14 days without power. My power was just restored Monday afternoon, and it's Friday. So I'm just now sort of unpacking, and my house still reeks of spoiled food. I cannot get the smell out. And so, I mean, a pandemic and an ice storm going into election day is not ideal. And so, just trying to survive day by day, hour by hour, and of course I was hearing from folks. And as I was able to get back out to door knock, I was in an area of my district where the power wasn't out for very long. And, a few people, it went out for a day or two and it came back on pretty quickly. But in the core area of my district, in the central part where Representative Walkie and I sort of meet up on Northwest Expressway, that's where our district split. And then Representative Mickey Dollins, who is on the south side of Oklahoma City, we were hearing from constituents regularly whose power had not been restored. Obviously, I knew about my neighbors and in my neighborhood because of my own outage. And but then they're sort of on social media, which is what happens. People follow all of us. So they started to kind of cross communicate about, well, this is going on in my neighborhood, what's happening in your area, and seeing some of us speak up. And so when I could finally catch a breath, I was able to kind of sit down and use my social media platforms to ask folks, if you're out of power or your power hasn't been restored, if you could just tell me where you're at. Because the red dots don't really tell me a lot. I just see dots. I don't see human beings. What is it that they're going through? If I can connect them to a service, how can I do that? And so I thought, and I'm not seeing a ton in the media. So I reached out to my colleagues and said, I think we need to be elevating this in the media and using, some official communication to start getting some conversation going and let people know we hear you, we see you, though I can't change everything in the snap of a finger. In fact, I said that I can advocate for my neighbors and I can find out what's going on as much as possible. So since then, I've been on talking about OG&E and power being restored and out. I did not think that this is what I'd be facing right after Election Day. So.
Yeah, I think a couple of things, and we've alluded to this, but I think to just put a little bit of rough numbers to things, OG&E said, and I don't think I've been alive for OG&E's entire history, but I've seen a lot of ice storms, I've seen a lot of power outages, and OG&E says this is the largest outage that they've had in their history. This was truly unprecedented in that way. It's one of the earliest ice storms we've ever had. I think it's the most severe ice storm we've ever had, and at this early in the year, or this early in the season, I should say. At one point, I want to say I think OG&E themselves had close to 400,000 people without power. And then all across Oklahoma, where the ice storm really kind of centered, it was something close to 500,000, maybe even more. There was a lot of people without power. And one of the things that made this so devastating was it hit Oklahoma City head on, and we're a city that, if you're not from here, people would be surprised to learn we have a pretty extensive tree canopy. And most of our electrical lines, once you're out of the suburbs, once you're in the kind of the city center, most of our electrical lines are above ground. And so lots of trees, lots of ice, and above ground electrical lines obviously creates a situation where this can happen, but it's never happened.
2 days of rain.
Before. Yeah, and 2 days of rain.
Yes.
And I'll, on the one hand, I feel for OG&E a little bit. I certainly feel more for the people that were without power for 2 weeks. But like, I think things like this happen, and things that most of us have never ever thought about, suddenly we have to think about a lot, right? And it's, I think, difficult for people to understand, like, well, there was a power truck on my street and like now it's gone, and like somebody has power and now I don't. And most of us, I think, have probably never thought about the fact that there's like, you've got transmission lines, you have distribution lines, and you have to have service lines. And like the service line that goes to your house, like if you fix the service line, it doesn't matter if the distribution line doesn't have power. And if you fix the distribution line, but the transmission line is out, then it doesn't matter if the distribution line is fixed. So they have a process that they go to in like order to fix these things that doesn't like. And the reason I say I empathize is because we face that sometimes. Like in my job, folks come to us with a problem, and it's like, okay, well, we're going to run some tests, and it's like, well, why aren't you testing for this other thing? And it's like, because I understand that the thing you would like to test for, like that could cause your symptoms, but only like 1 in every like 10 million people have that thing. And so first we're going to test for these other 5 things that are like way more common. And so there's like a process that we follow. Now, the flip side of that though, I guess what I'm saying is I think OG&E in many ways, it seems like, did the best that they could once this happened. But to me, and Representative Munson, you tell me if I'm wrong about this, to me, this happened because we've had years of neglect and maintenance that hasn't been done on some of these lines, and particularly the tree canopies that surround these lines. And it seems like that's definitely worse in some parts of the city than in other parts of the city. And so this is one of those deals where, you say an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Well, like maybe a couple $1 million a year in prevention could have saved having to bring in 4,000 workers from out of state and work 24/7 to restore power to 500,000 people. I don't know
and to be clear, I don't think it's that they weren't doing it at all, because I've seen them do it in my neighborhood. In fact, a lot of my neighbors were very upset. Some of their trees got hacked up last summer, right? But those power lines were intact the whole time, right? And it's because they cleaned it. But from what we've heard, they had scaled back their operations, and maybe therein lies part of the problem.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to highlight about your question, Scott, is that Representative Dollins, as he does, I guess he talked to a line worker from out of state, and that individual, I'm not sure who it was, but said that there could be improvements made in terms of prevention. And so I think that's a conversation we need to have. I also want to echo that I have an immense amount of gratitude for the line workers and customer service, folks who have been fielding calls, people who have come from across the country to our state to help us out. I mean, all of us, I believe, are grateful. I think my biggest critique when it comes to what could have been done in that moment, because of the historical nature and because of the size of the disaster, I think something in leadership that's so important, whether you're in public service or a private corporation or whatever work you're doing, putting a face to the brand, to OG&E in this instance, and to just show empathy by getting on a screen, to get on television or on social media, or using their communication outlets to say, we see you, this is a historical ice storm that we are dealing with, and we are trying to get through it as quickly and as best we can, because we're also in a pandemic. And so folks are by themselves, and they're isolating and quarantining, and medications are vital, and all of that. And I think that if I've heard anything outside of the long-term planning and long-term conversations we need to have, what's come up the most is communication from my constituents. And as a customer, there's nothing I appreciate more than somebody stepping out and humanizing what it is that they're doing, to say, this is a hard time, we get it, and we're doing everything we can. In fact, here's our plan, to give as much information as they can to calm people's anxieties, especially in a time like right now.
You're raising a really important point, because for the public standpoint, it comes across as Oklahoma was caught flat-footed, right? Mm-hmm. And there's confusion for the public of knowing who to go to and where the buck stops on this issue. And so we've seen people take it out on certain leaders when they're doing the best they can, but we know that even when it comes to regulating utilities and things, that it's up to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission to be thinking about those different things. And I know there's a lot of folks in the public who didn't even know that maybe that entity existed or their role in ensuring that more people got power sooner and their role in this process. And so could you talk about what that looks like for elected leaders as far as knowing how to point people where to go to take issues like this when they arise?
Yeah. And, to Andy's point about all the campaigns I've had the last 7 years, I show up on people's doorsteps. They know they can call me. They know they can email me or send me a message over Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, and I will respond and I'll show up. And I think many times what's frustrating for my constituents is when they call and I say, well, I don't have a ton of, no pun intended, but power over that. But the Oklahoma Corporation Commission does. They are the regulatory body over our public utilities. But it is so often the case that most people don't even know who the corporation commissioners are, that there are 3 of them, that in fact one was on the ballot just less than 3 weeks ago. And I say that to say that what I appreciate about what you all do is highlighting and educating and bringing awareness to these types of things. And hopefully your listeners will look into who the 3 corporation commissioners are and understand that they are elected officials and we are their constituents and we can go to them with these issues. But also, even if sometimes the frustrations are pointed at me, I even have to remind myself to take a deep breath. It's like they're coming to me because they trust me. They know they can talk to me. And then how can I look in my purview of work? What can I do as a state legislator, as a state representative? What can I do? And if I can't, how can I advocate for my constituents? But yes, in this particular instance, the Corporation Commission is the one to be going to with heated advice on how to deal with these issues.
So you're saying that there is a whole commission of people who regulate corporations in Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
The Oklahoma Corporation, that's like their
specifically utilities.
Utilities, yeah.
Like their whole job. So I first learned about the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. I think actually in driver's ed is when I learned about the Corporation Commission, because that's when I guess I was taught like about getting gas. I mean, I'd pumped gas for my parents before, but my driver's ed coach, because it was a coach, was like, yeah, so when you get out and the gas and you got these little deals on the pumps that show that the pumps have to be calibrated. They have to be calibrated every year, and they have to be within like a couple of teaspoons or a couple of tablespoons, because of course we use tablespoons and teaspoons to calibrate our gas pumps. And so the coach that taught me how to drive said I should always check the pumps at my gas station and look for the one that was calibrated such that I could get up to an extra 3 tablespoons of gas per gallon, so I could get a good deal, because that really adds up over time, especially when I was pumping gas at 16 and gas was 96 cents a gallon. That's when I learned about the Corporation Commission. But what would be their like power in this situation? Can the corporation mandate that like a public utility like OG&E, like you have to spend X number of dollars, or you have to trim trees in every area of town so often? I mean, like to Andy's point, like, yeah, it happens, but actually, and I moved recently, but in our old house, we lost power pretty frequently because we had a significant trees in the alleyway along where the lines were. And I can tell you, we lived in that house for 9 years, and we had an aspen truck in there trimming trees one time in like 9 years. Now, when they did it, they trimmed the living daylights out of them. I mean, they gave the trees a friggin' haircut, like no doubt. But like it was once in almost 10 years, and so can the Corporation Commission say that they're required to trim trees around all the lines once every 3 years? Like they have a time frame. Like what can the Corporation Commission do to ensure that these things are being maintained?
And one thing I want to add to even that list that you gave of examples, Scott, is can the Corporation Commission require OG&E to provide credits for people for the amount of time that they lost power? There's so many Oklahomans and businesses that lost money because of having to throw away food or not having internet, so they couldn't do their jobs, or they didn't have power, so people couldn't go to work. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of damage that has been done and disruption for people's lives. Can the Corporation Commission even play that role of saying, here's how this utility is going to help support Oklahomans in this season?
I would say yes, but I don't know for sure either. I mean, to the point of educating ourselves on, better, and going forward, really also figuring out like, what are the things the Corporation Commission can do? What can I as a legislator do? What can our local government do? City councilors, mayor, that's, all the conversations going forward. And then, how do we as legislators who are not in charge of the Corporation Commission, but how do we hold them accountable throughout this, and that we don't forget what happened? And to your point, Bailey, just about the lost time from work and throwing food away. I reached out to Bailey actually late one evening. I felt bad because it was going into the weekend, but, trying to also figure out relief efforts. And I'll say one thing that I commit to work on is funding for 211 being restored, because we cut them during our budget fights a couple years ago. And, they've been carrying the weight, not only for this, but the pandemic as well. And they lost power for 2 or 3 days. They lost power. They weren't able to get to their phones. From my understanding, where they go in emergency situations, the space is too small. It's too old. And it's too small in a time of a pandemic because social distancing and people were quarantining and isolating. And so I learned that a lot of those calls that agencies that have come together to be case managers essentially for the folks who lost power and were displaced from their homes, those phone calls were taking anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes at a time. I think some people, maybe they have by now, but at least a week ago hadn't even had a return phone call. And that is not I'm not complaining about that. It's just that's how high the need was. And trying to get people to get the information and get everything through the process. And so that's one area, at least for the legislature, an area that I'm concerned about and that I commit to working on. 211's office is actually in my district. And so, in times like that where, the relief efforts are there, OG&E did give $500,000 to those efforts, but my request would to give more, because I believe more is needed. But people have been out of work and medications and food thrown away. People are still getting bills. I paid my OG&E bill actually, or I'm about to tomorrow. So
no, there's I got a friend that has a property that's a house here that's vacant currently, but the vacant house was without power for 14 days. And she called OG&E to say, like, hey, are you going to even waive my base fee? Like there was no power for 14 days. The house is vacant. I didn't have a bill anywhere. And they were like, absolutely not. So I think that there certainly needs to be something. I understand that this put OG&E in a really tough spot. And I do I want to echo what you said, Representative Munson, about going out to I think as far as last heard, he's still in critical condition at the hospital. There was an out-of-state lineman who was shocked, working on a transmission line, and those carry, a lot higher voltage than what comes into your house. And he was in the ICU for several days and may still be there. That the job of being a high wire high voltage lineman is one of the most dangerous jobs that a person can do. And to do it at night in the cold and in the wind and the rain makes it more dangerous. These guys spend years. I mean, it's like they spend years training to learn how to do this, and it still is an incredibly dangerous job. So I think all of our hats, or I don't know, whatever else you wear that you might want to tip, can be tipped to them. But from the folks maybe in the more kind of corporate PR, financial bean countery side of things at OG&E, there's maybe a little work to be done.
Well, in contacting the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. So for our listeners who have concerns or frustrations, they are the regulatory body that sets rates and makes decisions and oversees utilities. So it's important that if you have concerns or you have feedback or questions, contact your corporation commissioner so they can give you answers.
Yes. And I wish I was equipped with this information right now, but maybe something to add as you're putting the episode together is listing out all the corporation commissioners, their email address, when they meet. I don't know when they meet. Unfortunately, I don't have that at the top of my head, but I think that might be something good to add as a resource in your podcast notes, because I mean, even for me, I'll be paying much closer attention than I have in the past for myself, but also for my neighbors. I mean, I have neighbors who did not have other places to go. And thankfully, the weather got warmer and they could be home and be outside and you know, at least, you know, not sit in a stale, cold house. You know, they were able to get out and get some sunshine. But what if that wasn't the case? What if the weather didn't turn? And that's just scary to me. And again, in a time where people are struggling so much with being isolated and a virus that is still spreading around our state, it's very lonely. And
I mean, I had two patients. I had one patient I had to check into a hotel so that he could have power, so that he could run his oxygen concentrator, because he depends on his oxygen concentrator and needed power. I had another patient who was in the hospital. Her power went out. She really didn't want to go to the ER, so she went without power and without her oxygen for 3 days. Got so sick that she needed to be hospitalized from going without power and without oxygen for 3 days. Wound up in the hospital, and even was ready to go home, but had to be kept in the hospital for an extra 48 hours, which is not awesome in the middle, ever, but certainly in the middle of a global pandemic, but had to stay in the hospital for an extra 48 hours until her power was back on so she could go home. So those are very, very significant, obviously, financial costs, very significant, risks in terms of being someplace that's not your home in the middle of a pandemic, and particularly when you're chronically ill. So this has real consequences. You know, there's the lost money of spoiled food is no small thing, but it has consequences even beyond that.
Yeah.
Representative Munson, you've got a meeting to get to, I think.
Yeah, here in a couple minutes. But I do want to say thank you, and just thank you for elevating, what's going on and highlighting where folks can be, where they can put some of their, frustrations and energy, and know that, myself and my colleagues are committed to having conversations and doing the work, and we will not let up. And so the ice storm may be over, but we'll keep working on and looking more closely at public utilities and making sure that that we all understand that these are necessities. These are not luxury items. These are things we need to live, especially in 2020, in a world where we're at home and working from home and doing everything from isolated spaces. So just thank you for taking the time to help me elevate the issue. And I enjoy listening to you all. So I'm excited to listen to this and hear myself, I guess, for a little bit.
Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And you're welcome. Come back anytime. I'm sure in the next 5 or 6 months, we'll have a number of other issues.
Oh, there will be.
We would love to have your perspective. So
yeah. Okay.
Right.
Sounds good. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you. I want to add, as Representative Munson leaves here, that it strikes me in this conversation that, and I think she's the one that hit on it most, we are living in the midst of a pandemic, in a situation where many people feel a loss of control, powerless to fix a situation that is directly affecting their day-to-day life, right? And on top of that, we had another situation in which people feel powerless to repair, to fix situation, right? To stop the hurting.
Literally powerless.
Right, exactly. And that's like the pandemic that is the undercurrent of everything in 2020 is difficult. Like I had a very a difficult conversation with my mother-in-law this morning where she was talking about like her struggles with everything that's going on and her friends and seeing her family. And I said the same thing, right? Like, we had a moment to kind of commiserate of like, this sucks. And then again today, another, 2,700 cases that were, announced today, bringing our levels to yet another peak, right? And it's just a lot. And it's okay. Like I told her, she's like, I feel like I'm not handling this well. And I said, no one is handling this well. And if they are, I'm worried about them because this is not normal. This is not okay. And it sucks.
I don't even think there is a lens to determine what well means in this season.
No. And, I know many of our listeners know Merrick and Casey Cornett. They were pretty public with some of their posts this week. Like they had triplets a few weeks ago or a few months ago, and they have a toddler who's Lion's 2.5. And they live in the urban core, right? And so they had big trees that went down and they lost power. And to be in the midst of a pandemic with 2 parents who work at home with triplets and a toddler and to have no power or internet for 2 weeks. And Casey posted like, we're broken. Like, this is not okay. Like, we're going to keep going and we'll find a way through it. But like, just know we are literally at the end of our rope. And yeah, man, like, and he acknowledges that they have some, they have family support and they've got things that a lot of folks don't have. But my wife and mother-in-law went to a hotel for a few nights. We were fortunate to have a family member that had some points they could use to like help offset the cost. And the first night, it was a really difficult night because the people in the room above them were loud. They said it sounded like kids were just running around, at 3 a.m. And so my mother-in-law spoke to the front desk and she's like, it sounded like it was kids though. And she's like, yeah, it was a single mom with 3 kids, like under the age of 5. And she had a hard time. So we're going to move her and we're really sorry. And we were like, it sucks we didn't sleep, but also like, what can we do? Can we bring her some groceries? Like, is there something we can do to help? Because I can't imagine. It's hard for all of us. And there's some lessons to be learned. And I think we would all be better off if we found a little kindness for our neighbors and recognize that we're all suffering in some way.
And not even just kindness. I would even add to employers out there to have more patience and flexibility with people who are suffering in so many different ways, whether it's the inability to connect with their loved ones. I'm reading on Twitter all the time, people saying, I wanted to see my mom or wanted to see my grandmother or wanted to see this loved one, but they're afraid to fly in because COVID cases are, off the roof and it's not a safe time for me to be around my loved one. Like that has an impact. Or, with the ice storm hitting and all of the domino effects that we just discussed, there's a lot of ways that like productivity just can't be the way that it was.
It's a difference between rigidity and flexibility, right? Like I think it's normal to be like, I just want it to be the way it used to be, and to like physically get kind of tightened up and be like, I don't want it to be this way. Like, just take a deep breath, relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and let's recognize together that we all feel that way. Nobody wants this, right? People who wear masks don't want this. People who don't wear masks don't want this. Now, mask wearing is a whole other conversation that we will maybe refrain from for a few minutes at least. But the fact is, like, I guarantee there's no one in America that's like, yes, bring on more pandemic, make life worse, make more people die, like, make it more difficult to do literally everything. That's not the way anyone's thinking. And because of that, like, we all share something here, and we should all share a desire for this to be as safe and to get this over with as quickly as we can. Now, there's some very data-driven scientific ways to make that happen that
like
are
wearing masks.
like wearing masks, right? And they're all hard. And this is the deal. Like it is, and I've tried to refrain from tweeting about this stuff for a while. In the last few days, I've just had a hard time because we have to do hard things. Wearing a mask is not hard. It's literally the least you could do. Is just put a little piece of fabric over your face and go about your life otherwise normally. And
I mean,
and that's it. Like that's bananas to me. It's super easy to save lives.
If everyone would do that, we would be in such better shape. Like, I mean, that's, you know, I'm so frustrated. I mean, I'm so frustrated. Like that I don't know. I'm not going to go off on it because we were already talking for 36 minutes and it's not anything that you guys haven't heard before or even have already said. It's just, it's not like I wear a mask all day, every day at work. Right. And like, I get it. I don't like it. I don't like wearing a mask. I don't like wearing a mask in the grocery store. I don't like not being able, I don't like this either, but like, that's the only way out, right? Like, yeah, I know we've got this, you know, Pfizer is saying that like their vaccine is 90% effective and that's awesome. But here's the deal. There's 350 million people in America, right? Even assuming only 80% of them get the shot, that's 300 million people that need to get this vaccine and they need 2 doses. That's 600 million doses of vaccine that have to be manufactured, that have to be distributed, that have, like, I think that there's real potential that starts to happen and that we see progress on that by like, you know, April, May, June of next year. But like, yeah, we got a long way to go before it's April till April, May, June, right? Like the vaccines are not coming next week to make this better. Like the only way out of this is through, and the only way through is to follow the directions and understand that you are protecting yourself, but you're also protecting other people. Like we just need to care about each other a little bit, right? Like I'm not asking you to like I'm not saying that you like, you know, we haven't talked Bible verses on this show in a long time, right? But like there's one that says love your neighbor, and that is what you should do. But I'm not even saying like you don't even need to love your neighbor. You just need to like them enough to not wish them dead and wear a mask, right? Like.
And Scott, I want to bring in, because I know we have other things that we need to discuss in the podcast, but before we get off the topic of COVID, I want to lift that we have to adjust the way we think about freedoms in this country, right? It really blew my mind. There's a person who was just elected to Congress, and she made this tweet about having her first session of new member orientation in DC, where they were covering COVID in Congress. And she said she proudly told her freshman class that masks are oppressive. She said in Georgia, they work out, shop, and go to restaurants. They go to work and they go to school without masks. My body, my choice. But the reality is
the fact that she said my body, my choice really got me.
Your freedoms end when they suppress somebody else's freedoms, right? So you don't have the freedom to spread COVID and give somebody a disease that could potentially kill them in this season, right? That's not your right. But you do have the right to be able to protect yourself and protect others. And so I think that's an important adjustment within the American psyche, that you are protecting other people's freedoms and your own by wearing masks.
Yeah.
So not even just caring about each other, but this is how we protect one another and how we elevate public health and public safety is by wearing masks.
And you can even use your mask to demonstrate your freedom of speech, right? Like your mask could say, I don't want to wear this. I think this is censorism. Okay, you can put that on your mask, right? Tulsa City Council member Kara Joy, Perry the other day, she had a pink mask that said mandate that she had made specifically because she was going to be on stage with the governor, like as a way to make a statement, which I thought was pretty ingenious. Like, I don't think he was a fan, and that's okay because that's how this all works.
And you know, nobody wants a lockdown, right? Like nobody wants a lockdown. Like that's not, no one wants to go back. But and I do not have any I don't have any inside information. Like, I'm not like on the governor's task force or the mayor's advisory board, or I'm just a guy. Okay. But I mean, I think that if something doesn't change, and I mean change rapidly, a lockdown is where we're headed, because we're not going to have any choice. Right.
Well,
Like,
I mean,
we're not
the
gonna have any
choice is death, right? Like, there's a very real chance that America will see several 100,000 people die in the next few months, like during winter, right? If people continue to do what they're doing, or we have a big lockdown that will cost the economy, in the neighborhood of like $50 billion a day or something. So while we've been recording, President Trump's announced, in his mind or his opinion, is that Pfizer's vaccine may be available to the general public in April, right? Obviously, first line healthcare providers get it first. So I would wager that the president's timelines are often very optimistic, right, in this situation. And so for him to say optimistically the general public wouldn't get it till April, that's 6 months from now. Just to put it, in your head that it's going to be at least 6 months before most of us are able to get it. Scott, as a frontline healthcare provider, you'll be the guinea pig and you get it first.
That's a lot of lives between now and April, right?
It's a lot of lives.
I mean,
We're losing 3 jumbo jets a day.
Let's say that it is 6 months, right? Just for the sake of whatever, we'll say that it's 6 months, and let's say that we average. I'm going to say average because it could be significantly higher than that. But let's say that for 6 months at 30.5 days per month, what is that? That's like 183 days. And let's say that we average 1,500 deaths a day, which I think could easily be conservative. That's another 275,000 people dead on top of the 250,000 people who have died already. And that's at 1,500 a day, right? So you're talking about 500,000 deaths from coronavirus, and that's what we know of, right? Like, and there's reason to think that could be undercounted.
We don't have the right to kill people, Scott. We just not have the right to do that.
Not with a virus, only with your gun.
Yeah,
on your property.
I mean, it's infuriating and it's sad, and I see it every day. Every day, I walk into a room and have to tell people, "Okay, please put your mask back on, or please pull your mask up so it covers your nose," or Anyway, I digress. Yeah. I'll just get
and CPS just announced today that after 2 days of returning back to the classroom in person, they've had to reverse the policy and go back to virtual learning through the end of the semester because cases continue to rise, and Oklahoma is in the red. And so it doesn't seem like there's energy around doing something beyond what we're doing. The concern lifted by the governor and Secretary Fry has been, well, if we tell people they have to do something, they're going to not do it to spite being told to do it. And so it's this really weird conundrum of,
it's like trying to get my kids.
If we do something, things get bad, but if we do nothing, things get bad.
Right. It's like trying to get my kids to clean up their room, right? We're trying to be like, how can I reverse psychology this? Well, at some point you have to be like, clean up the room or else. And there's a consequence, right? And that's the thing, right? And you gotta put on your big boy pants, as someone once said. Well, let's pivot away from coronavirus, because we can all sit here and just bitch at one another about this because we're all on the same page, as are many of our listeners, I'm sure. But let's pivot back towards what we talked about 2 weeks ago in our episode, Oklahoma County Shenanigans, because that haven't stopped. It's been a weird couple of weeks. So I think we left it where the Oklahoma County Board of County Commissioners had sent money to the jail trust, the CARES Act money to the jail trust, and the jail trust did not have a concrete plan for how to spend that money. And so they sent it. Since then, they have voted to send part of it back, right? So I think they've got a plan, and legitimately, like I
About
think
25 million.
some of the money needs to be used for the jail for like actual COVID related things, right? Maybe HVAC, personnel issues, all that stuff, right? Like that's related to COVID, which is an applicable expense and also definitely needed. But they recognize they could not spend all the money by the end of the year, and it needs to be spent, and it needs to be put back in the hands of Oklahomans who are hurting and need this, right? Businesses, individuals, whatever. So they sent that money back to the county, or they tried to. But in the midst of that, Commissioner Calvi, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that he tried to like terminate the meeting so that they couldn't vote to receive the money. He tried to intervene in there.
Yeah.
So he said that the reason he intervened to stop the meeting was because there were county staffers who tested positive for COVID. So that's the rationale thing of why he canceled it so quickly. And he claimed
Can I say something?
The other commissioners are playing politics.
Yeah. So
they called the meeting to order, and Commissioner Calvi immediately moved. He immediately moved to postpone the meeting. He got a second from Mr. Hooten, and then Commissioner Bloomer. I think he do what?
Was it Hooten or Mon?
I think Hooten seconded it, and then Commissioner Bloomer said, "Hold on, let's stop." And then they tried. They did not vote to postpone the meeting, and then they heard a bunch of testimony. Commissioner Bloomer made a motion to accept the money. They tried to table it. There's all kinds of shenanigans that I'm not entirely sure are consistent with Robert's Rules of Order.
No,
but yeah, it was a weird meeting that involved a trumpet being played and possibly spreading corona around the room. It was.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think where we've ended is that the jail trust is retaining some money to pay for actual COVID related expenses. That's the plan. The other money's going back to the county, but what are they doing with it? Are they giving it out to people?
Well, one of the ideas that's on the table is using it for small business relief. And so I don't know how much they will be voting on that, but that is something that seems like it has broad support among county officials.
I mean, that's a really good idea. I will acknowledge that today is November 13th, and they have to spend the money by December 31st, right? So that gives them 45 days to come up with a way to give the money out, and then actually transfer the funds. I guess that's the deal. As long as they get it transferred out, whether or not the entity spends them is up to them, but the county has to get rid of the funds in the next 45 days. So they're going to be down to the wire, right? And it's difficult for businesses that have been hurting for months and months and months to now, for some, it may be too little too late.
And I hope that they'll even consider using the funds for community supports. There are a lot of organizations that could use the dollars to infuse back into communities to help Oklahomans in need. We're seeing a magnified impact of COVID plus the remnants of the ice storm that are really still affecting people. And there are a lot of community organizations that can help people who are being harmed by this pandemic as the cases go up. And so I hope that DA Prater's interpretation of how those dollars can be reevaluated to get that money in the hands of community organizations that can put it to good use.
Well, and they had an organization at the meeting, and it's their you guys tell me who it was. I'm thinking of their initials, but I can't remember the full name. That is, I think essentially what's going to happen is they're going to be in charge of reviewing applications for the funds and then dispersing the funds to these businesses who need it. One of the issues that came up, and it's kind of technical, but so that these will not be businesses in Oklahoma City. They have to be businesses in Oklahoma County, because Oklahoma City got separate CARES Act fund that they use for this purpose. But so these will be businesses that are in Oklahoma County, but not Oklahoma City.
Bethany, War Acres, Spencer.
And Commissioner Bloomert mentioned that on her when she was on with us a couple of weeks ago. And that makes a lot of sense, right? Because small towns, right? Like Bethany, War Acres, Spencer, those places, I don't know that they received CARES Act dollars. Maybe they did, but I don't think so. I think it went to bigger metro cities. And so this is an excellent use. This is exactly why money went to counties to reach out to these smaller communities. And that's a good deal, right? Because if you are a small business owner and you own an antique store on 39th Street in Bethany, right? Like people aren't coming in necessarily to shop at your business, and you are having a hard time making rent, I'm sure, for the last 6 months.
Or there are so many businesses that don't have the capacity or means to readjust in the way to meet the needs of the consumer. So if you don't have the technology available to be able to take online orders and be able to do delivery of some sort in lieu of having fewer customers being able to come inside, or let's say you're a business owner who has underlying conditions that put you more at risk to COVID. There are so many businesses that have a hard time even adjusting in this season. So I know that those dollars to support many of our small businesses would be crucial, especially in some of the smaller areas of Oklahoma County.
Like Sophisticuts in Bethany, which is a haircut place. And I'm sure that they have not had the same business.
Sophisticuts?
With a name like Sophisticuts, I think you deserve to be saved.
I mean, it's
not as good as Blast and Cast Taxidermy that I used to live next to down in Texas, but
blasting cats taxidermy.
Close.
Cannabless is still my favorite business name right now. So
what's that?
Cannabless.
Cannabless, yes. Is that up on Western?
There's a few locations now, so
well, it makes sense.
Pop up everywhere.
There's a church on every corner. Yeah, no, it's Scott. It's Cast and Blast Taxidermy.
Oh, well, that makes more sense.
But I'm sure there's a blasting cats, whatever you said. Yeah, blasting cast. It was next door to Continental Hairlines, which I think was a haircut show.
Where in Texas did you live?
I lived in Brenham, Texas, home of Bluebell ice cream.
Okay, all right.
Well, I'm going to say the Bluebell jingle, but I'll refrain.
That's right. No, it's in Washington County, Texas, down on the Brazos River near Washington, the Brazos, which is where Texas became a state basically, and it's the Bluebonnet capital of Texas, also the baseball capital of Texas. It's about 45 minutes south of College Station, home of Blinn College, which is a community college, has a really great baseball program there. It's really pretty. It's a really cool town.
The more you know.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and say that of the businesses that you named, Bluebell is winning the branding war in Brenham, Texas.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's hard to compete with that. They have a beautiful campus. There was a one day a month or so where they would make the brownies for the Brownie Bite ice cream, and the whole town would smell like brownies, which is great because then I moved from there back to Edmond, where about once a month it would smell like dog food, and that was less good.
One day I want to have a business that is so successful that instead of having an office, we have a campus.
Ooh, we could just refer to. I mean, we've got the studio, and we could just start referring. Yeah, let's fix this campus.
Here on the Let's Pod This campus. We should do that.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping us, right?
We're kind of rambling now.
Scott has an important announcement here to end us on.
I just learned this. So apparently there is a new movie coming out for the holiday season. I think it's going direct to video, direct to streaming. This movie is called Fat Man, and it stars. I would say that I'm just going to quote the article here. It features renowned anti-Semite Mel Gibson playing
hang on, stop. Okay, stop. What? It says renowned anti-Semite, or was that your commentary?
New movie? No, it says, I'm quoting, the new movie Fat Man is a dark spin on Santa Claus, featuring renowned anti-Semite Mel Gibson as an unhinged Santa.
Holy moly! That's not the official,
that is the byline.
That's from the movie. It's not from a blog.
This is from an article on the Daily Beast. Reviewing the movie.
Yeah. Okay, but it's the reviewer's commentary. It's not from the production house.
Oh no, it's not. No, it's not.
It's not no. In a world with renowned anti-Semite Mel Gibson.
No, it's not. It's not that. No. Well, now we've ruined it.
I don't think we ruined it, Scott. I don't think the ruining happened with us.
But somebody made a movie called Fat Man where Mel Gibson plays a deranged Santa Claus. I don't. So the picture, and it's like it's a drawing done in the style of a Norman Rockwell, but it's Mel Gibson looking very angry with a parka, holding a pistol in one hand with cut off gloves, and the other hand having what looks like a chalkboard that says naughty or nice. And behind him is, I don't know if it's supposed to be an elf with a machine gun, but yeah, it's very strange.
So I just looked it up on IMDb, and it says it comes out on the 17th, so that's in a few days, next week. Santa Claus must contend with a hitman sent from a disappointed child.
Well, there you go. That's what they call it on the Daily Show. Your moment of zen. That's your moment of zen. That's Fat Man with Mel Gibson playing a deranged Santa Claus.
That's something else. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Listeners, thank you for being here. And what a roller coaster this has been. We take 2 weeks off, and we're just out of the habit and lost all of our marbles. Listeners, I hope you're doing okay. I hope you're warm and your power in the internet has been restored. If it hasn't, my condolences. I tweeted at Cox today and got a quick response. That was very welcome. If you would like to contact us with the program, please send us an email at podcast@letsfixthisok.org. You can also hit us up on Twitter at Let's Fix This OK. Let's Pod This is produced by me, Scott, and Bailey. We are a production of Let's Fix This and a member of the Mostly Harmless Media Network based right here in Oklahoma City. Our theme music is called Rhino Funk by artist So Down. And Let's Fix This is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We appreciate your voting. We hope you'll do it every single election for which you are eligible. And remember that decisions are made by those who show up.